Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to a very, very special show. We've got a superstar guest star here today, none other than guitarist, songwriter, and founder of Dream Theater, Mr. John Petrucci. John, welcome to the show. Happy.
Hey, what's happening? I was wondering who the superstar guest was. But
it's certainly not me.
I like your name. I like the Sea of Tranquility. That's a good name.
Yeah, well, we've had it for a long time, almost 20 years now. So
Nice.
been around for a long, long time. So, and we've talked a lot of Dream Theater and John Petrucci over the years.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
So it's a good time for John to be on because he's got a brand new solo album out called Terminal Velocity. And, it's been 15 years since your last solo album, Suspended Animation. So when did the kind of idea kind of start to do another solo album? Because it's not like you haven't been busy doing all sorts of other things in time since then. So when did the kind of seeds of the new album kind of start happening?
Well, it's been on my mind for a long time, actually. I mean, with the first one, I did it as a result of being asked to do G3, originally not having any material to play and having to write songs for it. And then was like, I should really make these into an album. And then a couple of years later, Suspended Animation came out. I didn't really have that need after that so much. But then as the years started going by and I was doing more G3 events and things like that, it's kind of like, well, you're going to keep playing the same songs over and over. And I started to write some new material several years ago. And some of the songs I played live on G3 or at my guitar camps. Happy Song and Glassy Eyed Zombies are examples of those that are on Terminal Velocity. But more and more with interviews with people like yourself, I would get asked constantly, when are you going to do another solo album? And you can only say, soon for so long. So, 2020 hit the 15-year mark and I was like, I really need to get this done. I certainly had amassed enough ideas and song seeds and things. I'd been thinking about it a lot for a while. And I planned on doing it in March, and then the pandemic hit. And it basically just gave me more time to be able to finish it. But I had planned on this year. Yeah, I guess just, why now? I don't know. The 15-year mark seemed like a big deal. I had even before COVID, I had kind of a lighter 2020 as far as Dream Theater touring. So and I had a camp. My camp was coming up that we postponed for next year, but that was supposed to be in August. And it's like, I can have this done before then and premiere the songs. It just all sort of felt right to do it now.
I mean,
that's a
let's
very
be
long
truthful.
answer, but
No, well, but also too, in saying all that, I mean, let's be truthful. I bet you, if you really think about it, that 15 years went by pretty damn quick.
It did. It went by really quick. And the thing is with Dream Theater, I mean, we're a very active and busy band. And so if we're not in the studio creating a new record and getting that ready for release and promoting it and everything that's involved with that, we're on tour in support of it. And it's been like that nonstop for 35 years.
Yeah.
So during those 15 years, I mean, so much has happened with Dream Theater. This might sound like an excuse because the other Dream Theater members were able to get solo albums done. So why wasn't I? But I just never had a chunk of, 3, 4, 5 months to dedicate to do it right. And I don't like doing things piecemeal. I did my first album piecemeal and I didn't really enjoy doing it that way.
So you got two familiar faces on the album. So you got a guy named Dave LaRue, who everybody knows. You worked with him on your first solo album, and he's been a member of the Dixie Dregs and Steve Morse Band and Flying Colors, so everybody's familiar with Dave. And then this guy called Mike Portnoy. I think we all know who he is, right? So what was it like working with Dave again, obviously, but more importantly, I mean, you and Mike haven't worked together in a long time, so it's been like a decade. So how was that like getting back together with both of them individually and together?
Yeah, I mean, well, with Dave, I actually have a ton of experience playing with him because he played on Suspended Animation, which was my first solo album that we just talked about, but I mean, not only has he done my 2 guitar camps, but I think I've done G3, 8 times.
Yeah.
Through North America, South America, Australia, Asia, Europe, and Dave has been on every one of those tours, and those are long tours. So I have played, many, many, many shows with Dave LaRue. Him and I have a great musical relationship, and of course, always promised him, and it started to become a joke, but always promise him when I finally do another solo album, like, you definitely have the gig. And so that was great. Gave him a call, and he was in and on board. He had to record remotely, due to the pandemic and stuff. So he did record his tracks in his home in Florida. But with Mike Portnoy, I mean, that was amazing. He left Dream Theater over 10 years ago. We've been friends, of course, but we haven't done anything musically together since then. We've gotten together socially and et cetera. So this was a very sort of exciting opportunity for us to like do something musically again, since his departure from Dream Theater over 10 years ago. I asked him to do it. He said yes. And he actually doesn't live too far from me as far as East Coast states goes. So he was able to come up to my studio and track the drums in person, which was great. And we hung out for about a week. We had a good time, and it was really, really cool. He did a great job. Both those guys, I mean, monster players. They really delivered the goods on this for me. So very grateful for the two of them.
So with you and Mike, did it just kind of pick off where you left off? I mean, it's been 10 years, but I mean, saw a lot of pictures, happy faces. And I think the internet blew up a couple of years ago when there was that first picture, you guys at Christmas hanging out together with your families. Right. And it's like, so, I mean, that's like, that was great to see. And I think a lot of stuff was kind of talked about in the press, which probably really wasn't true. And I mean, you just said you guys have always still been friends despite not working together anymore. So was it kind of like a comfortable glove? You guys get back together and just got down to it? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, in this case, it's a little bit different than when he was in Dream Theater, because with this album, I wrote it all and recorded all the guitars, the final guitars, and then programmed drums and played bass. So there was like a completed album that basically Dave and Mike had to learn. So when Mike came up to the studio, we didn't really get to play together. We didn't write the songs together. We didn't really play together. There were a couple of things that we were able to work out and play together a little bit. Some of the more confusing sections, just to, wrap his head around it, we jammed on a bit. But it, even just that was fun. As soon as he started playing, the first song he tracked was The Way Things Fall. And it starts off with these big drum fills, very sort of Rush, Neil Peart thing. As soon as he started, me and my engineer Jimmy T looked at each other. We're like, there it is.
I remember that.
Yeah. And he just, there's a familiarity in the way that I think the two of us sound together. Even though we didn't write this music together, just he understands my playing, and his approach, I think, sort of brings out the best of that, and vice versa. So there's definitely like a nostalgic familiarity that we were both experiencing, and I think that people pick up on as well when they hear us play together. And another thing worth mentioning, the two people who made this possible, who did a really stellar job, is Jimmy T, who's my engineer, who recorded the whole record and did such a great job. He even got additional production credit because he was just wonderful to work with. And then Andy Sneap, who mixed and mastered the record in the UK, and just, both those guys just made all of us shine. So could not do this by myself.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great sounding album. And I think one of the things that I really like about the album is that it's so melodic, which is a trademark of everything you've done, quite frankly. But, for those who are looking for the blazing guitar work and the big killer riffs, there's all of that. But I love like the really melodic lead lines and things. This is instrumental, right? So you have to kind of replace what would be vocals.
Yeah, exactly.
And you get all that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the Oddfather title track, the Happy Song is a real happy song. You got Gemini, which absolutely, kicks butt. So how much of these songs were like fully realized before you actually go in and start recording, or do some of them, seeing as it is instrumental music, do some of them kind of take shape and maybe move into different directions than you initially kind of envisioned them while you're actually recording and going through the tracking of the album?
Actually, pretty much all of them sort of take shape in the way that you're describing. I'll start writing a song with usually just like a little idea, Terminal Velocity, the title track. I mean, the only thing I had from that song was the opening motif. And I literally started the song with that. I had a kind of, my approach that I talked to Jimmy T was about, I don't want to go through a demo process. A couple of the songs I had demos of, like Happy Song, Gemini. I'm sorry, not Gemini. Glassy Eyed. I had demos because I wrote them on the road and had to show them to Dave LaRue, to be able to play live on G3. But all the other songs, I only had little seeds for. And so I didn't want to do a whole process of like writing the music, doing scratch guitar parts, demoing it, getting some sort of sketch, and then, okay, 2 months later, let me start recording this. So I'm like, I'm just going to record the actual takes as I write it, which was fun, So I literally did that with Terminal Velocity. I only had that opening snippet that you hear that opens the record, recorded that. Like, okay, where should we go next? And programmed drums and played bass, and then on to the next part. And it's kind of fun because in some ways the songs develop, they develop organically. There's nobody else there besides my engineer. I'm not bouncing songwriting ideas off of anybody. It's not collective. It's just my own brain sort of being like, where do you want to go now?
Yeah.
Not that I talk to myself, but maybe I do musically. I don't know. And then as they sort of develop, they take on a life of their own, and they start to make sense. And you start to see the path. You start to see a possible way for it to end, and you just build it like building a house.
Yeah.
But it's not building a house with a blueprint. It's building a house by just like, let me lay down this foundation and see what happens. And it's fun. And I think the songs, I don't know, they take on a different type of attitude and mood and feeling when writing that way. But yeah, most of the songs, I just had the basic melody. Out of the Blue, just had the opening melody and that chord progression.
Well, I mean, that's a song I wanted to bring up because I wanted to bring up like almost like two different spectrums here. So you got
sure.
Out of the Blue, which is kind of like a jazzy blues vibe, which I really loved. And I thought it was a really nice change of pace on the album. And I'm curious if you ever would have the urge to go into that style on future, maybe solo albums. And then the other is Gemini, which is, to me, it's almost like Liquid Tension Experiment meets like Scenes from a Memory era Dream Theater. And then you got that cool little classical break in the middle. It's just a really cool stuff. So you have a lot of variety on the album. But back to Out of the Blue, I mean, that I think for me was really, really interesting. And how was it kind of putting that song together?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, I collect song ideas all the time. Whenever I'm playing guitar, even when I'm not playing guitar, if something hits me, I'll just sing it into my phone if I have to. But when I'm practicing on the road, in a hotel room, sound check, or whatever, at home in my house, just playing guitar, if something hits me, I always record it. So I had tons of these song seeds. Out of the Blue, some of them are better than others. Some are like, as I'm reviewing them. But Out of the Blue just always stuck out. Like I don't know. I really liked it, and I thought, I want to do something with this. It's not Dream Theater-y. It's definitely more of like a solo blues type of thing. I was a little unsure. Like, it sounded so familiar. I'm like, I hope this isn't another song, because it had a very like natural sounding melody to me. And again, I just sort of built the song from there, and it took on this whole bluesy vibe. A great example of Dave and Mike's ability to cop that style, do that sort of shuffle playing, and then, shift into more straight time for the bridge and the ending. But yeah, that was just something that stood out to me as one of the cool song seeds that I had collected, and that I definitely wanted to put on the album. I also thought it would just change up the mood a little bit, so it wasn't all metal and hard rock and shred, and just do something a little bit more expressive and bluesy. Gemini is way different, because that's actually the oldest song on the record. I didn't really I have like a whole bunch of songs that I never recorded for real that are pretty old. And I didn't really have a desire to bring that stuff back because I didn't want this album to be like recycled old stuff, you know. But having said that, the song Gemini was always one that stood out. I used to play it at guitar clinics or at the NAMM show. It was like meant for a guitar demo thing. And that's probably why it goes through all these weird changes and stuff, because I was just trying to, like, I don't know, demo, just show what I could do on the guitar.
That's the wow factor.
Yeah,
track on the album, right?
Right. But the interesting thing, so that was like early, like mid 90s, or I think there's like a YouTube video of me at a NAMM show at like 95 playing it. So that's the period. But the interesting thing is that I didn't have a demo of that song to work off of. You know, like I thought to myself, I definitely want to put Gemini in the album. It'll be nostalgic for anybody that remembers that song. And it's just a cool song. But how am I going to relearn it? I don't have any version of it. I never recorded it. So me and Jimmy T like scoured the internet for what we thought was like the best YouTube version of like somebody in the audience with their camcorder in 1993 or 4 or whatever. And I learned it from there. And it was weird because, you know, it's like I'm playing a guitar clinic. I'm not playing perfectly. Some of the ideas weren't executed right. So I had to kind of extrapolate what I meant to play and relearn it. And we built, you know, we created a Pro Tools session with, you know, based off of like this live version, and then started programming drums and playing bass. And so I had a bed and then building the guitar from there. So it was a little bit of like reverse engineering to get that song up. And then the middle section where it goes into like a gypsy jazz solo, that was all accidental. The original version just had a really long electric guitar solo, but when I was recording the acoustic rhythm parts to that section, I got into this whole Latin feel thing. I'm like, oh, you know, this might be cool. I might change it up. And I started soloing on the acoustic one night, and it's like, I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to divide this solo into an acoustic part and electric part, which is actually kind of very illustrative of the whole Gemini thing. So that worked out. And that happened spontaneously and accidentally, but I like the way that came out.
Yeah, it fits really well. The whole track just works really, really nicely. Yeah, it's, like I said, there's a lot of variety on the album. You got The Way Things Fall, which has kind of like a lyrical kind of Satriani vibe to it. Again, the guitar's melody is kind of taking place of what would have been vocals. I think that works really good. You got Temple of Circadia, which is pretty heavy. Lots of kind of cool proggy things going on there. So a lot of really nice, cool pieces on this album, I think. So I know we're going to get a lot of gear hounds watching this video. So what guitars were you using for the album, amps, effects, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's pretty simple actually. I used my signature Ernie Ball Music Man Majesty guitar. I used a 6-string for the whole album except for Temple, which is a 7-string. And you know, my signal flow is real simple. I plug that right into my signature boogie, my JP2C head. And then we mic up a 4x12 boogie cabinet, like the Recto normal size, the big size. Mic that up. That's my sound. You know, we go through Neve preamps and, you know, just try to really get the purest dynamic guitar sound that we can get. As far as effects, I mean, I didn't use too many effects. I mean, I used it sounds like, oh, I'm talking about all my signature stuff, but I use all my stuff. So, you know, I reach for a wah. It's my JP95 Dunlop wah, Crybaby. So I use that, and my Dreamscape chorus pedal, and, you know, a couple of other spots. I think I used a Boss phaser. So it, you know, basically I record dry, but if I ever want like a, you know, phaser or some type of in the front of the amp sound, then I'll do that. And then all of the delays and stuff are post plugins. But yeah, it's pretty simple. The idea is to you know, hopefully generate a really good sound and then capture that sound. And again, I mean, that's Jimmy T did that brilliantly, and Andy took it to the next level when he mixed it.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds it. Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
yeah. So in kind of closing, I guess, take us up to like the present day and in the near future. So obviously
Sure.
with COVID happening now, I don't know if that kind of derailed any potential live gigs you might have wanted to do with this, but do you
Yeah.
have any plans to maybe when the time is right to do something with this, with the solo record? And then what's next in store for Dream Theater? Because we're probably coming up on that
Yeah.
next Dream Theater album time, right? Based
Yeah.
on past history.
Well, I mean, I didn't really have plans on touring for this, you know, specifically. Like I it kind of wasn't in my grand plan. My plan just kind of it really, what was involved in it was getting suspended animation out available digitally for the first time, and then following that up with the release of Terminal Velocity. By the way, I released Terminal Velocity digitally first on August 28th, and the vinyl and CD are still available for pre-sale. They come out October 30th. So it's a little bit of a weird way to do it, but I wanted to get the music out first, by the end of the summer so people could enjoy it. But for those of you that like physical copies, which there are apparently a lot of people out there that still love CDs and vinyl, look at you. That's all available. But as far as a tour, like, I didn't really think forward to, oh, now I'll tour off of it, especially with COVID, because it's just so uncertain. It's still uncertain. Dream Theater had touring plans this year. It was, they were all postponed or canceled. We're talking possibly a year from now. So, touring on this solo album is not, it's not a reality right now. It's not something that's on my mind. But now that I have catalog, I have 2 solo albums, I could potentially do a tour, and that would be fun. But, honestly, it's not something I'm thinking about now. As far as Dream Theater, we sort of had to pivot our schedule because we were going to do some touring this year and then take a break and probably not get into the studio until next year at some point. But now that there's no touring and there's sort of nothing else going on, and everybody's had to change their approach and schedule, we're going to start a new record in a few weeks, actually, and that'll be out later next year. So we kind of shifted our plans a little bit. And then, when everything changes and if any sort of solo touring opportunities arise, then I'll certainly take advantage of that. But that's, right now, it's not part of the plan.
Okay, cool. So I guess last question, since we got a minute. Now that you and Mike did this together, any plans to do something else together in not too distant future? I know a lot of people keep asking about Liquid Tension. It's like, well, are we ever going to get a 3rd record there? So
Right. Well, can we go off the record for a second?
we can.
Okay, because this is taped, right?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, I tell you what, why don't we, we'll finish this up, and then I wanted to ask you something else anyway. So
all right, cool.
I want to thank John Petrucci for joining us today. This was a great interview, and go out and check out Terminal Velocity and visit us on the web at www.seattranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Thanks again to John Petrucci. I am Pete Pardo. See everybody soon. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Thanks so much.